All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 14th of December, 2022, and this is the Cluster API project meeting. Cluster API is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting etiquette, which essentially means if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and I will call on you. And if you, please treat each other, kindly and with respect. Sorry, I'm getting my screen set up here a little bit for this. So at the beginning of our meetings, we'd like to give an opportunity for new members of the community to introduce themselves or say hey, or people who are attending for the first time. So I'm going to be quiet for a few, and if anyone would like to unmute or raise your hand, please feel free to welcome yourself to the community. All right, I am not seeing any hands go up or anyone unmuting, so I'm going to guess that we will pass that part for now. So we'll next go to the open proposals readout. And I think we only have we only have one here, the label sync. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on that topic?
Yeah, I think that this proposal merged, and so we can remove it.
Oh, okay, cool.
I will do so.
Okay, thanks, Fabrizio.
Michael, you're on mute. So.
Wow, that is too funny. Thank you, Vince. Okay, let me rewind a little bit here. So first, the first discussion topic for today I have up, and it is about the KubeMark provider. So I am looking to do another release of the KubeMark provider soon, and we could use a few more reviewers there. I have a PR that's up that could use a little bit of looking at. And I think in general, just the cadence there, we get some, when cluster API updates, we want to be updating that more frequently. But it's moving a little slow on the reviews. So I just wanted to bring it to the community here. If people are interested, you can definitely reach out to me. I'm more than happy to do deep dives or share examples of how the provider works. It's fairly simple in comparison to some of the other providers. It doesn't have quite as much code. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up here in case people are interested or perhaps, looking for a project to do some reviews on or get more into the cluster API community. And kind of on that note, I know, I'm curious about self-approvals. Does anybody know in the wider kind of Kubernetes SIG land, like I realize it's poor practice to do self-approvals, but I'm just wondering, is there any guidance around that in the wider community? Yeah, Lubomir.
Okay, so usually the guidance, for example, in the kubeadm source code is what we do is we, for example, if I'm the author of the PR and I automatically get an approval by the bots, the approval label is applied, I can put a hold. So if somebody else wants to review, eventually once we have consensus on the PR, we can remove the hold. That's what we do.
Okay. What about situations where I'm having trouble like getting a reviewer or something? Is it ever acceptable for the author of the PR to also add like an LGTM for it?
So I've done this in the kubeadm repository for very small changes that are arguably harmless, but usually the best practice is to always get the eyes of another person.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Lubomir. I will. Oh, Jack, I see you have your hand up.
Well, Lubomir, you're probably talking about like an admin merge, is that right? Because I think an LGTM would just be rejected by the Kate spot.
Well,
It is, yeah.
if you have an administrator rights, you can actually add the label, and the bot will reconcile it and merge the PR. So
You shouldn't. I didn't know that. That's dangerous.
Yeah, it's not,
that I know that now.
It's not advisable, but you know, for a small change like a typo fix or something like that, it's okay, I think.
Okay, but in order for that to work, you have to have enabled it you have to enable it for the Tide bot or whatever it is, right?
I think you just have to be admin. You have to be God mode.
Yeah, and also support the LGTM mechanic in the bots. But like I said, it's not advisable. Like, you have a problem with reviewers or something?
Just sometimes, we get like small changes there. Like I'm trying to put up changes and what I'm finding is I'm having trouble getting reviewers. So that's why I'm trying to reach out to the community here and just see if there's people who are interested, who would be interested in looking at that code and whatnot.
So what people do usually, for example, with SIG testing, if they cannot get a LGTM from anyone, they just ping like a bigger Slack channel, and somebody will just do a pass-by review and can LGTM for you.
Yeah, Fabrizio, you got your hand up.
So first of all, you can consider me as a reviewer, but probably I'm already in as a SIG something. And so feel free to ping me if you need help to unblock stuff. Second, I think this is a super interesting project. You know my idea, and I will like to bring to this audience two use cases that how this project could help this community. The first one is we like a test on the autoscaler. And we really need a test for the autoscaler in main cluster API. And so KubeMark was kind of designed to help test this. And we just need a signal in main cluster API. The second one is that it is a thing that I'm discussing with a couple of folks. We need some sort of scale testing for cluster API. And KubeMark could really help here. I've played a little bit around KubeMark recently and shared with Mike a little prototype where we basically run both control plane and KubeMark pods, try to make the things as thin as possible, and so we can scale. And so I'm not only here to help, but I also plan to do some work soon to get this project to cover these use cases.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're on it as a maintainer through the CAPI stuff, Fabrizio. But thank you for volunteering, and also Killian, thank you for speaking up in chat. I will look to reach out to you two probably in the next week, because I'll try and get the release PR together, and then I'll ping you guys. So thank you. I think that's good for me. Did anybody else have questions or comments about the? Oh, Furkat, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with it's dangerous, but I know that you can set up the pro so that whenever you open a PR, and if you are a approver in the repo, it will automatically approve that PR, like whenever it's open. So it will tag it as approved, and you just need the LGTM. So in case if that helps, that should be doable.
Yeah, and like my PRs are going up and they get approved because I'm one of the maintainers there. But yeah, like I kind of wanted to work around how could I get someone else to come and help me.
Okay, yeah, that's already there then. Yeah, no mind.
Cool, thanks. Anyone else have a question or comment about this one? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So Mike Tugeron, you've got the next topic about Kubernetes event when the cluster is ready.
Yeah, so someone opened, I forget who exactly, I guess I could look. opened up a ticket or an issue a couple weeks back, or months, I guess, at this point, about emitting Kubernetes events when a cluster is ready. They put in some suggestions of what they felt was most appropriate for when they thought that an event should be emitted. There was some back and forth about what others thought it meant when a cluster became ready. There was some discussion around, well, perhaps we should just emit events based upon cluster status for the various status conditions. And it's kind of come down to at this point where I think we need to kind of poll the team as to what the definition of ready for emitting this event should be, because it kind of seems a consensus is a combination of status conditions, not just a single status condition. And I wasn't sure what is this the right forum right now to just kind of poll, or is there a proper way to poll to get kind of a consensus around what that should be, and just how to get that poll to get that consensus of what the definition of it for when to emit the event of being when a cluster is ready.
Yeah, good question, Mike. And I see this has been triage accepted. So I don't know, Fabrizio or maybe Vince, do you have any comments about kind of the next steps for this? Yeah, Fabrizio, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think that most of it all boils up to what problem are we solving. So what are we trying to get an information about when we can install something on the clusters, or when the control plane is ready, and or what is the control plane ready? When the API server answer, or where all the control plane machine happen. So I think that, let me say, first of all, we are to clarify what problem are we solving. Second, I think that we already have almost all this signal, either in condition or in flags. No, we don't have events for all of them. So in my opinion, it will be much simpler to just look at what we have and see if we can instrument it. So it not only transition a flag or transition a condition, but also raise an event, like we have in some place in the code, but not in all, instead of trying to reinvent a new notion of ready. We already have initialized ready, some of them. Can we reuse them, or do we need something new? And if we need something new, what is the use case that we're trying to address?
All right, thanks, Fabrizio. Vince, you had your hand up next.
I read the use case. I think it's pretty clear to me, like what this is trying to do is like kind of trying to wire up Argo with Argo events. Like I'm curious to understand if because events are just ephemeral in a lot of ways, and there were a lot of discussions back a few years ago that and we would rely on events for some things, but then you see events are missing depending on how the cluster, how many events are being received in the cluster, and so that was causing some issues. So wondering would Argo be able to initialize or trigger a self event of some sort? I never used it when something changes in the status instead, because that's already, the information's already there in that case.
Mike, you had your hand up. Did you want to respond to Vince or Fabrizio?
So I can add to 2 points on that. One, for Argo, the Argo event can handle update, add, delete, and patch, delete, add, and I think there's a fourth one, but it won't handle it doesn't handle transitional states for the conditions. That was something I looked into. So basically the use case is a little more than just Argo events. if Argo events would handle kind of those condition changes, that would be perfect for me. But there's kind of two conditions that I'm looking for. One is when the event is emitted of a cluster becoming ready, I want to trigger an Argo workflow to do things like adding it into Argo CD, or to trigger some things into our change management system, other workflows, sort of events to finish provisioning the system beyond what Cluster API provides. So that's kind of some of our use cases for this sort of feature. From back to what Fabrizio was saying, I do think that just kind of emitting events for each of those status conditions would be sufficient for my use case. I don't know if that's sufficient for the user that opened the ticket, but for me, that would be sufficient.
Okay. I guess Fabrizio.
Yeah, I think that if we can basically go and extend state transition or that we have or flag transition with events, this kind of non-controversial. We already have for in a couple of places. It is just raising more events. And so just if we have to introduce something new, it will require some discussion just in order to avoid to, I don't know, overload the term ready that has many significants or stuff like that. So yeah, my suggestion is simplify, try to make the request as simple as possible and if possible, stick to what we have, because it will make it faster get a solution.
So I guess Fabrizio, would you like to see another issue opened, or should we try to kind of modify that issue, or what were you thinking?
No, it's not necessary to have an issue. So I think that, for instance, Mike now described, oh, I need two moments to be instrumented. Okay, let's try to enumerate them. Let's try to define them. Because at certain point, if you look into the thread of the issue, there was someone commenting, oh, we have to instrument all the transitions. This is ideal, I understand, but it is also a bigger effort. So let's try to, I think that if we figure it out what we need and we know, and we do small chirurgical change, we keep going to the direction without boiling up the ocean. Is that what I'm trying to advocate for? So if we keep simple, we make one step at a time, we can get there faster than aiming too high.
I would agree that just to add that a little bit, is we already have this transition in place. There's a lot of places like in the cluster controller code that like basically checks like if the whole state is ready, right? And then transition that condition to ready. And I feel like it would be probably a very welcome addition to just emit an event there, right? To start with, and maybe in a couple other places. And then, yeah, at least start from there, because these are smaller changes. They're just easier to just get merged than everything else. Yeah. That should solve the issue that was open as much as I understood from the description.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there already are some places where we do emit events, like in the KubeADM provider that do something similar to that already.
So I guess like action items out of this, Mike, I saw you had a lot of comments on that issue. Would it be appropriate for you to go back there and kind of like put another comment on with a summary of what's being asked here, like the use cases you want, and then kind of the related changes, and let focus on keeping the kind of initial cut small, and then maybe we could grow it later.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I'm also interested in actually implementing the change, so that works out perfectly.
Awesome. Yeah, like PR is always accepted, right? Okay.
Appreciated is the right word, not always accepted, but
Well,
appreciated.
yeah, not always merged, but yes, always appreciated. Good point, Mike. Does anybody else have a question or comment about this topic? All right, I'm not seeing any other hands go up. So Fabrizio, you've got the next topic with some new versions being cut.
Yes, so in the last couple of days, we were kind of busy trying to nail down an issue, a couple of issues that we discovered when people use long names for cluster machine deployment and so on. So we now have a fix for those issues, and we are cutting 1.3.1 and 1.2.8 right now. Most notable, we added a validation on cluster machine deployment name, so we prevent issue on creation. And everything else, it is managed in the code. So basically, those are not breaking change, because if you were using cluster machine deployment name longer than 63 today, things were already failing, but not in an explicit way. We are just making the failure happen in a visible way. So yeah, so information number one, we're cutting a release. It fixed a bugs, and always nice to add. Second, I will really take the opportunity to give kudos to the release team. They just started their work 1 week or 2 weeks ago, and they are already taking care of cutting the release and cooperating very well among them. So I'm super happy how things are going. This is a really great improvement from our work. And that's it for the release. I don't know if there are questions.
Does anybody have questions about those releases? I'm seeing a lot of chat about like congrats to the release team, and yes, I'll echo what Fabrizio is saying. It's, you know, it's tremendous to see this kind of go from what we had talked about earlier this year to now, like, you know, things are happening. All right, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So Fabrizio, you've got the next one with a status check.
Yeah, talking about a release. So when we discussed our release calendar, we kind of pointed out that a key point for our release cadence is the capability of providers to pick up the new release somehow timely. And so I would like to make a first status check on provider migration to v1.3, just to get a pulse on where we are. I don't know if there is someone from providers that can give some, if this is already happening, Planet or whatever.
Did you want to take kind of an informal pulse here?
Yeah, if possible, yes. Otherwise, we'll open a thread in the channel.
Okay. I see Jack has his hand up, so go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I see Furkat is present. He deserves all the credit for CapZ integrating 1.3. So that's been in place for, memory's a little hazy, but at least a week, maybe 2 weeks. So thanks again, Furkat.
And I don't know if Cap Kubmark, I don't know if we're calling that Cap K or what. I don't know. Killian just put up a PR to upgrade to 1.25, I thought, but I don't know if we went to 1.3. Killian, do you know, did we take that all the way up?
Yeah, it was 1.3 eventually when the thing merged, I'm pretty sure.
Cool. And it looks like from chat that Kappa is also on 1.3.
Also CI, Capio CI. Okay, that's great. So it seems that from the maybe we have to check on cup V. But yeah, things is happening. So this is a great answer for the community. Thank you very much to everyone doing this.
I know this is terrible of me as a maintainer, but were we calling KubeMark Cap K or did we have a different name for it?
Cap K.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Fabrizio. Oh, Cap G is also there as well. All right, so feel free if other providers want to put their information in chat. I'll try to keep watching that. Vince, you've got the next topic with management controller ideas.
All right, thank you. So this is just like a very early thoughts on something that I've been prototyping the past couple of weeks. So to basically expand on this, like right now, there's like a couple of problems just in general, like in the ecosystem. It's like when we build a controller, it's usually controllers are built for a single cluster, and when we have to expand another cluster API has a lot of hacks to do so. But it's basically like there's very, very little support to basically like watch tons of clusters, get notifications for clusters, and then act on those notifications. So what I've been thinking, like, and this is a kind of a combination of cluster API and controller runtime, is to have better support for watching many, many clusters, but also maybe add like a more native support to watch cluster API workload clusters from a management cluster. The goal here is, this is what I have in my mind so far, is to basically improve what it means for what is a management controller. So define that, and could be a controller that runs in the management cluster, but ultimately like this controller has to run actions on the workload clusters and maybe on the management cluster as well. So just an example that I have been thinking about is IPAM. If I want to have IPAM coordination across many, many clusters, and this is a very small and simpler example, and it's also niche, but gets you an idea. Like I need to coordinate IP leases and address it in space across every cluster, but I may also want to say the cluster itself will register as CRD and it will allocate the CRD. So within the cluster, I know what IP space I have. So I might want the controller to watch all the clusters that the management cluster has under its management and act on those, but ultimately coordinate within the management cluster purview. That's just a basic idea. Like if you have more use cases, like please reach out. I'm starting to kind of putting this all more together, and there will be a couple of efforts that we'll need to kind of go through, one of which is in controller runtime specifically, and then kind of integrate it with cluster API later. But the ultimate goal is like to make it very easy to kind of manage controllers through a fleet of clusters, like instead of like a single cluster.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah, but sorry, go ahead, Jack.
I actually wanted to comment on the previous topic, so my hand is raising. I'll go to the back of the room and wait for this topic to finish. Sorry if that's confusing.
That was confusing to me. Did you have a question about this topic, or did you?
No, I wanted to talk about the previous topic, but I don't want to talk about it now because that would interrupt.
Okay, cool.
The momentum on this topic.
Okay,
cool, I actually
cool.
have a hard stop, so I have to actually drop. But feel free to reach out on Slack, and we can have like follow-up meetings, and we can discuss it another time as well.
All right, cool. Thanks, Vince.
Thanks.
And thank you, Jacob for setting me correct there in the notes. So yeah, that sounds like a really exciting topic to me. Please reach out to Vince if you have questions or you have ideas. And Fabrizio, did you have your hand up for this topic?
Yeah, just wanted to say that this will solve a problem like the cluster cache tracker in a more structured way. So I'm definitely +1. And also, let's not forget the discussion that we had the last week about inverting the communication pattern between management cluster and workload cluster that kind of fit into the picture. But yeah, really interesting topics.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the addition there. Okay. Now, Jack, you'd like to go back to the status check.
Yes, so long as no one else has any comments on the management controller.
Does it? Yeah. One more last call for hands on the management controller idea. All right. I'm not seeing any hands
Cool.
go up. So I'd say take it away, Jack.
Okay, cool. So I agree that this is really great to see all that integration. I wanted to sort of maybe pose the question about what do we do with back compat integration? Because strictly speaking, providers, when you adopt 1.3, that doesn't mean you don't work with 1.2, just using those two as an example. For CAPC in particular, for a practical point of view, I don't believe we test 1.2 for CAPC. At some point we release a new minor which is going to cut to 1.3 as its tested validated CAPI pairing, and then we sort of stop testing the previous versions, and that's a sort of practical contract that I think it's worth calling that a practical contract. It's not a strict contract, because for folks who want to continue consuming future versions of CAPC, we're not requiring that they also go through the process of updating to CAPI 1.3 using this example again. So I wonder, do we want to make this contractual? Do we want to sort of define this more formally? What do other providers think? Any thoughts?
Yeah,
Fabrizio.
Fabrizio, go ahead.
Just trying to understand what do you mean with backward compatibility. So currently we have different guarantees, one for the API, one for the contract, and one from the Golang types. Current bump, for instance, 1.30 is just only for the Golang types, but API types are compatible, contract is compatible. So
yeah, I'm talking about the latter, the API stuff. So I'm talking about the practical fact that folks running, say, Kappa might prefer, they may have an operational scenario where they prefer to update Kappa continuously as new releases of Kappa land, but update their management fleet sort of less periodically for whatever reason. And at some point, they may be running a version of Kappa that's not actively tested against the version of CAPI that's on their management clusters. I don't mean to pick on Kappa, but because this might actually not be true for Kappa's perspective. Maybe they test N-3 versions of CAPI against every version of CAPI versus every version of Kappa. I'm not sure. But in CAPZ's scenario, what we do is we sort of methodically move forward, and at some point we stop testing older versions of CAPI against newer versions of CAPZ. And so I think we're in a situation where there are probably in the wild folks running CAPZ at a particular version with a particular version of CAPI that we're no longer testing. Because, as you say, Fabrizio, those API contracts are backwards compatible moving forward. And so they can continue to do that safely. It's just that we're not testing it for practical reasons.
yeah, so let me say, given that the API, the contract is compatible, I don't think that it is. I think that it's just fine to not test them. Okay. From the other side, if I look at what we do in Cluster API, in Cluster API, we have two main dependencies, which are controller runtime and Kubernetes. And whenever we bump them, basically we have a new branch and we keep testing the old combination and new combination, because yeah, we prefer doing this way. So I think that is not necessary, but from the other side, I would like to leave each provider to choose how much invest in their branching, invest in maintaining different branching, cherry pick, and different CI signal, because it is an effort. I understand. Yeah, we feel the pain in main cluster API, but we kind of think that it is necessary to have a proper senior on Kubernetes, especially.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not hearing a lot of comments from other providers. Go ahead.
Just one clarification. Why Cluster API has a specific contract and specific guarantee for the providers, Kubernetes does not have such guarantees for us. So we are kind of required to test, and the same is controller runtime. So they can break something. Instead, between Cluster API provider, there is a better communication. This meeting exists for this scope. So I think that is not really the same, but yeah, I just wanted to report this.
Cool, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm not hearing from other providers with any feedback right now, so I'll probably take this into the CAPC community and see what folks think, just in terms of if we can improve our advocacy for when you move forward with CAPC, you know, move forward with the tested version of CAPI, if at all possible.
I think there's a couple good comments in the chat here as well. So from Richard Case, I see that Kappa does not specifically test older versions of CAPI. And then Lubomir has an interesting point too, which is, it says, I wonder when or if SIG K8's infra will message us with, hey, Cap star has too many test jobs, burns the CNCF credits. If that happens, then we might have to discuss provider sponsorship. So I think that's a great point as well. When we're running on kind of these public infrastructures, every additional test case, adds to the cost and whatnot. From a KubeMark perspective, since that provider is mainly made for testing, I wouldn't have any problem with doing that kind of matrix testing. But I think CapK is kind of off on its own a little bit in some of these respects. And Fabrizio says we're dropping test frequency for old branches. So I'm not seeing any other hands go up. Would anyone like to make a comment on this? Okay. And Fabrizio says they also use CapD with one VM. So, okay. Thanks, Jack. That was a good callback and a good question there. So we'll skip ahead again. Fabrizio, you've got the next topic with planning on reviving the migration of the CAPI book to Hugo.
Yeah, this was something that I brought up some time ago. So now I hope to have some time. And yeah, I have this prototype. Something is already migrated. If you go into documentation, for instance, documentation, then if you go user guide under reference, there is a glossary CRD. So TLDR is that, in my opinion, so I'm playing around Hugo. I'm not a tech writer. I'm not a web developer, but it seems really simple. And at the end, we got a better organization of the document because Hugo managed, because what we have today is that we have everything in one single index menu, which is just exploding. If you look at the current book, here we can organize, and I like the idea that we can organize stuff around what is relevant for the user, what is relevant for the providers, and what is relevant for the CAPI developers, which is a kind of which are the three main persona that they follow this project, and but in the current book we don't have such a good separation of concern. So what I'm looking for with this call out, I'm looking for some feedback from the idea. I don't know if someone already used Hugo and they have experience. It is a bad tool, a good tool, whatever. Second, if they have some idea on what I'm just discussing, separating document, trying to give them an organization is a good idea or not. What do you think about? And thirdly, if there is someone interested in this effort, and so we can kind of nail down how to make this happen, because yeah, it will be interesting to figure out how to make this happen without being stuck in rebasing on the maintaining 2 books for a long time or stuff like that. So it is a nice idea, but a lot of detail to be figured out. And if people are interested, we try to get this morning moving. Otherwise, I will continue my research at best effort, like I'm doing now.
I don't have an option to raise my hand. Oh, I see David raised his hand. Go ahead. You go first.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I know that. I mean, I'm generally interested to help, but I think there's a lot of different documentation issues, and I know we have a couple of people that are on the documentation approvers list. So I think I'd really like to see kind of a plan of what is going to, what that list of worker migration is. I mean, I think the template is good, and I do know that that combination of tech, the Netlify and Hugo, is one that the CNCF folks utilize. But so multiple things, I guess. One, seeing if we can get some help from CNCF, and 2, maybe talking with some of the docs folks on the bigger plan and the issues that are there that we could scrub and things like that. For instance, there's one issue that I commented on just one part of the doc that is saying, hey, refactor it. And I made some suggestions, and then it just sat there. So it's it'd be great to just kind of prioritize and have a bigger plan to do the migration amidst a lot of the issues that are there before we just dive in. Does that make sense?
I think so. Basically, you'd like to see how how we're going to transition and kind of like a written plan for how we'll take it from the current site to the new site and what the kind of changes will be and everything.
Yeah, I think that would also help because we did some of this work on the notary project a while back, and it kind of helps as well if we get someone from CNCF to have a plan of, hey, we want to kind of do this, and they can obviously provide their own input as well. But if you kind of just start here's my site, and it might take a while, and you have to do that work anyway to try and help iterate on what's your goals and what do you want to try and migrate, what not. So just having some more of that written out, I think, would be really helpful all around for even just whoever wants to contribute, even if we don't get help from CNCF.
Great points. Fabrizio, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I kind of agree that having a plan is necessary, especially for figuring out the transition. From the other side, at this moment, basically this idea is simply understaffed. So I'm just figuring out if Hugo is a good target, if it solves the problem that we have, what are the advantages, and I really need help. So we really need, if we want to make this happen, it cannot be a one-person job. There should be a team of volunteers that plan to make this happen in a reasonable time, because we don't want to do the double management, basically. And so now I'm kind of playing with the technology. I'm not really yet there to plan the activity, and this is why I'm trying to raising awareness. If we get to a critical mass, we can make it happen, and I think this will be valuable for the process. I just look at it in Netlify. Our book gets more than 1,000 access every day, and so it is valuable for the community. If we can make it right, probably this can also increase.
Yeah, no, I think there could be value in kind of cleaning up and streamlining. There's just the current cluster API book is there's just so much there that it's hard to follow everything just at a rough feel. So I think the refactoring could be really helpful. I know Killian is somebody who's been pretty responsive on some of the issues. And he's one of the 2 doc approvers. Have you talked about this with him, or there's one other person that's, I believe, on the docs approver owners list?
Yeah, I have pinged Killian and Oscar about the idea. We are kind of brainstorming together, but
Okay.
yeah.
So I'll just add my comment here. You know, I'm happy to help out with this. Like I've done a lot of doc site building as well. I'm not a huge Hugo fan. I think MK Docs would be another interesting technology to look at for us. I like MK Docs a little more because I think it's easier for not people who aren't necessarily used to more complicated docs tool chains to get involved. It has kind of a flatter file structure and just uses markdown files like pretty much as the mainstay. But aside from that, like I'd be happy to help out with this too if we need some, if we need some more organizing and just, even just moving docs and whatnot. So I'm happy to get involved if we start to put together like a working group to look into this.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'd be happy to help too. The only thing I think would be good to just sanity check is again the CNCF folks, because I'm likely they have like a set of tools that they kind of work with, and maybe ones that they're outside of that bubble. So I think it would be good to just kind of know if if we use MK Docs or whatever else thing, that it's not somewhere offshoot to where we're going to be kind of out of a happy CNCF supported path if we wanted to ever get help from those folks. That would be my only suggestion, really.
I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, for sure.
I think in terms of the next step, I mean, I sent a link to Fabrizio on that, and you'd need somebody that has the CNCF like login for the service account, because you basically file a ticket on the Atlassian CNCF portal. I don't have that, but yeah.
Okay, I will see if I can file. It will be nice to talk with someone. Ticket is not a nice human interface, but yeah, we will figure it out.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, cool. Good discussion there. And I just wanted to call out a couple comments in chat here. Yuvraj says I mean, I'm not understanding that. There can contributors summit. Yeah, go ahead, Yuvraj.
Yeah, I mistyped that. So sorry. I was just saying that at the last KubeCon, there was a contributor summit talk about various technologies used for creating docs. And it did a pretty good evaluation of the pros and cons of each of the setup, including MK Docs, and I believe it also covers Hugo. Maybe we can take a look at that. I don't know if contributor summit talks are recorded, but if they are, maybe we can take a look at that to maybe help us guide if we can get inspiration on what are the right things to do and so on. Because I remember it also covered topics about how do you handle separate docs for different versions of the products and so on. So which is important for us. So maybe we can take a look at that.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know if those contributor talks were recorded or not, but that sounds really interesting. Maybe we could reach out to some of the docs people who participated and see if there were some notes or something, or maybe a slide deck we could look through. All right, it appears Jacob's already found it. I'm not sure if this is the same one, but I will put its link in the docs just so we can review it later. All right. Is there any more comments or questions about this topic? We're getting down to the last 8 minutes here, so I'm probably going to try and move things along a little bit. Jonathan, you've got the next topic, working on K8 SIG repo for Helm. Take it away.
Yeah, so this should be pretty quick. I'm just giving an update on the Helm project. Right now, I'm working on getting my repo migrated into a K8 SIG repo. I'm pretty sure I have everything set to go. I just need approval from, I guess, whoever's in charge of that. I'm not really sure what the actual migration is going to look like. do you know if I would do that myself, or would somebody create the repo and then I can just add stuff to that?
I do not know personally, but I see that Lubomir has made some comments on this. If he's still around, perhaps he has a comment.
Yeah, so I guess I think the only step left would mostly be some logistics.
Yeah,
So-
I'm guessing if you've given them a source for the repo, that there's probably automation that will migrate it over for you, but I don't know that for sure.
And yeah, so besides that, we were also thinking about getting a meeting set up for that as well. And so there are kind of two ways I was thinking we could go with this. One is just make that a part of this meeting if we don't really need that much time. And also that way everybody in CAPI can see what's going on with that. Alternatively, we could try to set up a separate meeting time if we just have too much to discuss. Do any folks have any thoughts on that? Or any kind of preference?
Yeah, Cecile.
I personally, perhaps selfishly, would prefer doing it in this meeting to avoid having yet another community meeting to attend, but especially at the beginning as we're ramping up and there isn't much happening. If we do see that there is a need for a separate meeting, then I think that would be fine to evolve into.
Okay, yeah, I think until we have critical mass, I think it would make sense to put it in this meeting and also keep everybody else in the loop for that. Does anyone have any other thoughts?
Yes, does anyone have any objections to doing it in this meeting? And I see Fabrizio says in the comments, we can do it after this meeting finishes as well, right at the end of the agenda. So that, you know, if people aren't interested in staying for that portion, then they could leave after that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I guess that's all for that. Unless anybody has any other objections or thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any chat or hands go up, so I would say if you want to go on to the next topic, that sounds good to me.
Okay, yeah. Also, we don't have to commit to this decision now. It's just sort of, I'm just sort of trying to get a idea of what people think, and then when the new year wraps around, since I know a lot of people aren't around, we can sort of set that in stone and decide what we want to do. But as far as the next update goes, I cut another patch release of the Visualizer app, and I fixed a couple of bugs with how cluster CTL worked with it. I think there was an issue where sometimes it would end up reinitializing some of the stuff, or the CAPI controller manager. So I fixed that, and also I set it up so it can work offline, so we're not pulling any online assets either.
Very cool. And I know that Visualizer is like it definitely it makes people in the community excited. It makes me excited, at least. So good to hear, Jonathan.
I'm also working on some new things for the Visualizer, including a dark theme. So get excited for that.
Dark theme, that will be greatly appreciated by us night owls.
For sure, for sure. I turned it off and then I went blind for a little bit. So
all right, cool.
Yeah, that's all for me.
All right, cool. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm going to push us along here to the provider updates. Jack, you're up first with CapZ.
Okay, having a little AirPod drama here locally, so if you can't hear me, I apologize in advance, but I think we're good now. So yeah, I wanted to add for CapZ that the managed Kubernetes, our Azure Managed Cluster, and other related CRDs graduating from experimental effort is nearing the finish line, which is great news. There's a lot of folks using that, and so we're planning to add test coverage, and then with community approval, move the APIs from experimental to V1 Beta 1 sometime in early 2021. We're trying to pin that to the the 1.8 release or development cycle. So right after we cut 1.7. So that's just an FYI, and we'll talk about that more in our office hours. So since we're out of time, or nearing out of time, let's punt over to Richard real quick.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, Richard, take it away.
Yeah, just a very quick one, really just what's written there. We're trying to resurrect the CapG office hours again in the new year. So if anyone's interested, just come along to the channel one, just say you're interested so that we can accommodate times and frequency. That's it.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you. And finally, Jack, you want to give us an update on the managed Kubernetes feature group?
Yeah, so we met this morning, and I think we've got a decent momentum for continuing to do this indefinitely. So that's great. Thank you for opening up that link. The PR to sort of define this in the CAPI repo is, I think, nearing merging. So yeah, come join us if you're interested in managed Kubernetes and cluster API.
All right. And
we meet every, sorry, I'll add this important detail. We meet an hour prior to this meeting every Wednesday is the cadence we've established. And we're going to take a break for the duration of 2022 as folks go on holiday, but essentially 9 a.m. Pacific standard. I think standard is the correct thing. The back and forth in the spring and fall between daylight savings. So
yeah, I can never keep that stuff straight. All right. And we're like sliding into the finish with 1 minute to spare. Does anyone have a less than 60-second comment or topic or something they would like to bring up? In 3, 2, 1. All right. That's this week's meeting. See y'all next week. Thank you for coming out and a great discussion, everybody.
thanks, Mike.